Welcome to the Near Patients Podcast. I'm the host, Henry Wilson, and it would be amazing if you would like and share this podcast. Also, please consider subscribing on YouTube or following on Spotify for more content. This episode is brought to you by eStudio 54. I hope you enjoy. Noah Wilson, welcome to the podcast.
What's going on?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It is a Tuesday.
It is a Tuesday.
Which means it's not a Monday.
Hey, speaking of which, someone's in. Hey, Ian, do you want to do the podcast next week or sometime in the future? You probably could get out of class.
I mean, we need you to talk about BMX because nobody understands.
Just for a minute, and then we can talk about like the universe or something. I don't know. Cool. All right.
Okay.
Well, you'll hear that podcast in a few weeks. But that being said, hello everyone. My name is Henry. Welcome back to the Near Patients Podcast. We have a lot in store for the day. But first, I want to do a quick corrections and omissions. Well, firstly, no, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Again, it's Tuesday. We're gaming.
You know, some people say this is the worst day of the week, but I actually really like Tuesday.
No, Tuesday's a good one.
Yeah, I know. I normally end up not having like any extracurriculars to do. So
it's a real chill day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's always cool. So that being said, corrections and omissions. This is our 5th episode in the podcast, and by this time I've said some things that are completely wrong. So this is what the corrections and omissions is. If any of you have any corrections or omissions, put it in the comments below. But at this point, I haven't said anything too dumb. I did say something really dumb last week. And
this is like the Associated Press fact check.
Yeah, this is the fact check, but it's more like
used to those.
So yes, so this was actually, I was corrected by my mom on last week's episode with Maddie Downing, and I mentioned that the story of how most of my family ends up living in Puerto Rico, I got it completely wrong. To all my family listening, I am ashamed. I am foolish. I just got it all wrong. If you don't want to go...
You're just a bit mistaken on the family tree. I get that.
I was quite mistaken. So this is how the story goes. No names being attached. So my mother's father, so my grandfather, was the oldest of 4 kids. He had 3 sisters, and one of them married a man in Fort Chaffee, Fort Smith, and he was Puerto Rican. And after he got done with the service at Fort Chaffee, they moved down to Puerto Rico. They started their family tree down there, and that's my Puerto Rican side of my family. So I completely got that wrong last time, but that's how that story goes. I think that's really about it with the corrections and omissions.
That was the one that caused a big stir at home.
Yeah, that was an interesting moment to say the least.
No, we love our Puerto Rican family though.
Yes,
awesome.
we do.
Whenever they're in the news, we pay attention.
Yes.
So yeah.
Puerto Rico's really nice. I really like.
It's such an awesome place.
What's the rainforest? El Yunque, or how they pronounce it, El Yunque, or something like that.
I don't think there's a J.
Well, some people pronounce the Y's with the J's, and it's always kind of confusing.
The thing that's awesome about Puerto Rico is, so last week was spring break. Was it or it was 2 weeks ago?
It was 2 weeks ago.
So I saw a bunch of people on my Instagram feed. They were going down to Puerto Rico, but it was like kind of touristy Puerto Rico. They didn't really see it for what it was. And I mean, there's a limit to how much I've seen. But when we've gone, we've stayed with our cousins, and it's like in a normal Puerto Rican neighborhood, and we've just stopped at the little shack, I don't know, but essentially what would be like a drive-in or like a drive-through restaurant here.
Yeah,
you stop at a
exactly.
McDonald's. Well, in Puerto Rico, they have McDonald's, but if you're smart, you'll stop at the place on the side of the road that sells rice and beans and whatever meat they have.
Yeah, it's the equivalent.
They'll give you a plate for like $7.50, and it's just like, oh my god. And it's packed with about 300 grams of carbohydrates. It's great. I love it. So Puerto Rico's great.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of like the hole-in-the-wall barbecue that you find a lot here in the South. Well, the Mid-South, rather. You know, at least where we are, that's not as common, but, you know, you'll be driving through, you know, southern Arkansas, Mississippi, northern Louisiana, or just really anywhere in the South, and you'll just see a random random restaurant on the side of the road.
Greatest food in the strangest places, the least suspecting places. Same thing in Puerto Rico. You really got to look for the good stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, love that place.
So last night? Yes, last night I did something on my Snapchat, and it was anonymous questions for Noah and I to answer
YOLO.
on the podcast. Yes, through YOLO. And that's the thing with YOLO. For those who don't know what YOLO is, essentially on your story, you ask a question, or it's like, be honest with me. But what ends up happening is that people abuse it, and they're like, say mean things about me. And then for some reason, people say, well, because not understandably, but it's like you said mean things. So people
because it's anonymous. Sometimes your best friends will just bombard you with rated R inside jokes that you really can't do anything with.
And then people get butthurt about it. But I did it for the better this time around because I wanted to get these questions about just questions about Noah, and I want to answer on the podcast today. We didn't really have too much to talk about. So, yeah. So what's a good one to start about? Oh, yes. So, Noah, what are your thoughts on Mars colonization?
Let's do it.
Do it?
Humans want to explore. Unfortunately, sometimes, if you look at American history, whenever we try to explore, we're not really great at colonizing with grace. So,
yes.
Hopefully, with nothing on Mars that is living, we can't really do anything too terrible. But no, humans want to explore, and what do we have left to explore on Earth? We have a lot, but it's like the ocean. We've got the ocean to explore, and we've got Alaska. So,
Alaska.
Yeah.
Well, just parts that are uninhabitable to the normal human.
That's true.
Yeah. Like there's parts that I would imagine in the Sahara Desert that the only times I've ever traveled on is, it would be historically when they would, have big camel caravans going across the Sahara to, the Kingdom of Mali from the Middle East.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I pretty much agree with that sentiment. I think colonization of Mars I think that's not, a 5, 10, 15-year thing. I think that's more like 50, 60 years down the line. And it'd be awesome if I could be alive and see the first person step on Mars at the current rate of, privatization of.
I feel like somebody's going to do that before the end of the decade.
I wouldn't be surprised if we send
Definitely.
people at least to Mars. I'm not sure if we'll land on Mars. Kind of like they'll maybe do like a flyby, kind of like how when they went to the moon, they first did a flyby around the moon in Apollo 8, and then they actually did more testing and actually like stepped foot on Apollo 11. I wouldn't be surprised
like
if
going to orbit.
Like yeah, like go into orbit or do a kind of a gravity assisted slingshot the spacecraft back to Earth.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm all for it.
Yes.
Just do it responsibly.
Another question. This one was kind of a random question. Noah, what are your thoughts on Gandhi?
Gandhi was dope.
He was pretty cool.
I like people that stand for something. I'm a big fan of people that stand for something. In the age we live in, it's really easy to just, complain about people that don't agree with you. Oh, they're stupid. Nah, 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 nah. But in my book, even if I disagree with you, if you truly believe in something, I'll give you points for that. If you really believe in something and you live by it, I like that.
Yeah, the whole thing with Gandhi that I find really impressive is that he was able to. Mind you, I haven't done a lot of research on Gandhi. This is just what I'm going off like the top of my head. But watching the movie Gandhi, and then
I haven't seen it.
It's a great movie.
Like 3 hours.
It's long. One of the coolest things about that movie, kind of a side note, is that over time you can see how his accent and English progresses. So at the beginning, when he's a lawyer, when he's kind of higher in Indian society, he speaks with a very heavy British accent, and that's because people who taught him in school, they had a British accent. But then over time, as he becomes more of an activist and more of a leader of the Indian independence movement, his accent actually becomes a lot more Indian in that movie, which is a really cool observation because that's actually what ended up happening.
Subtleties.
It's the subtleties of that movie that make it great.
Yeah.
But I find it really impressive how he was not able to unite because during that time, during the Indian partition, there was a lot of conflict between the Muslims and the Hindus. So Hindus, sorry, or Hindus. Oh crap, I'm not.
One of the two.
It's one of the two.
Forgive us.
And I find it very interesting how he was able to, and very, I would say, impressive how he was able to keep a peaceful mindset with the whole concept. Even though I feel like he was probably a little bit of an optimist at the time, with him hoping that the Hindus and the Muslims would end up, being together, but religion tends to separate us in moments like that, and great conflict.
Yeah. Gandhi's a very interesting fellow. A lot of stuff to learn from him.
Yeah, and his influences on like Martin Luther King Jr. That's kind of a really cool thing.
No, definitely, it's a cool.
The whole idea of peaceful protest and all that.
Yeah, Gandhi did it. Gandhi really, really did a good job with that.
So our third question. Okay, let me find it here. Ah, yes, here it is. Do you think that there is a stigma against neon colors in American society?
Yeah, you mentioned that one last night, and I hadn't thought much of it. I think people that gravitate to neon are typically younger people. There's only so many younger people. I mean, if you're artsy, you probably like neon. If you party hard or whatever, typically when you're younger or whatever, you might like neon. That just seems like something. There's like a prejudice or.
Yeah.
No, people are fine with neon. They just typically are younger. As you get older, apparently you appreciate spring more. Those are probably the colors you gravitate toward, less of the neon, more of the real beautiful colors. I mean, spring's popping now, which I love it.
Spring is really nice. I will say that something that's kind of weird is that the smell of, plants blooming and trees blooming at sometimes is really, really nice. It's a nice smell. It's kind of rosy, all of that jazz. But then other times, it's just so much blooming that you smell it in the air and you're like, wow, this is not pleasant whatsoever.
I don't have a pollen problem. I'm really lucky there. I lucked out in that department. I don't have really any allergies or anything like that.
I think I have a little bit, but it's not too bad. It's like maybe one day in the spring I feel like crap, but it's nothing too major.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next...
Genetics dealt me a good hand.
Yeah, I guess that's how that works. Noah, do you have a dream car? And if you do, what would it be? Or just like an ideal type of car?
A dream car? I'm not really one that likes all the sports cars and stuff. I mean, you won't see me with a Maserati whenever I'm making 12 figures and stuff, but...
Yeah, big if, but okay.
No, I will say I like Land Cruisers.
Oh, like the Toyota Land Cruisers?
Yeah, I've seen like renovated Land Cruisers, and those are awesome. They just look like an explorer's car, and I like that about them. And they're Toyotas, which I don't know much about cars, but in my childhood, and adults talk about which cars they like, which ones are the most durable, and which ones you can count on. Toyota's always the one I hear mentioned, so it's made a good impression on me. So whenever I'm getting a car, that'll be something I think about, which brands have the best reputation that I'm aware of.
Yeah, the Toyota Land Cruiser ends up being, I think, like the most expensive car Toyota makes.
It is.
And it's because it's like the quality of like what you would imagine a really nice Land Rover would be, but unlike Land Rover, it's actually like reliable past 120,000 miles.
I don't see the thing with Land Rovers and Range Rovers and stuff.
I think it's just it's an expensive car, and that it looks nice. It's kind of like a Jeep. It's a foreign car, so it kind of have all those mixtures, all that.
I mean, I
see
see those in Springdale. I mean, if you go to the right spots, you see Range Rovers and Land Rovers and stuff like that. And I mean, if you're going to spend six figures on a car, is that really the one you're getting? I mean, that's just my opinion. But
the way
if I've got $100,000 to put on a car, it's not going to be one of those.
Yeah, if the way I think about cars is that, dream car, 6 figures to spend on a car. I would either want like a coupe that goes really fast, like what's a good one?
Oh wait, I want an Aston Martin.
An Aston Martin?
Jim Bond drives an Aston Martin. I want an Aston Martin.
Is that the only reason why you want an Aston Martin?
I probably not have the minigun in it or whatever. I would
probably not be street legal.
Probably not. I would keep the seat ejector thing. I don't know if that's legal, but we can keep it under wraps. That's why it's got a little hidden button. Nobody needs to know about it, but if I ever need it, if somebody's annoying me or has a bad opinion, just boom.
I really wish I had that in my my Avalon when you speak. So
I think you might start doing a little black market searching.
Who knows?
Just to mess with Noah.
Never know.
Yeah, we'll think about that.
Yeah, I will.
You can definitely get one of those for $100,000. Settle for a used car. Spend the other $90,000 for a seat ejector.
Yeah, But to go back to what I was saying, I think if I were to get like a car, like a 6-figure, car, it'd probably be like a coupe, like the two-seater, but nothing like one of those supercars that, go at, 240 miles an hour. Just like a really nice, like Lexus coupe because it ends up being reliable, or I don't know, like maybe a Beamer because it's a Beamer.
Cars are cool, but I'm a minimalist. It's not something I want to spend too much money on. It's one of those, I think in terms of money and assets and stuff, what can you invest your money in? And cars are a hard thing to invest in, especially if you want a newer car. You got to really think about it, because the second you leave the lot, it decreases in value. The way cars decrease in value is very interesting, and unfortunately makes them less and less of an asset unless you've got Jay Leno money and Jay Leno garages.
I'm trying to think of that, the word that's the economic. It starts with a D. What is it? It's not decomposition. It's
degradation. Or
oh my gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Okay,
we'll think about it.
We'll think about it. Yeah. But yeah, no, I would either want that or like a Toyota Land Cruiser, because those things are like a mixture between a really pimped out, Suburban and also an SUV at the same time. It's like a kind of like that size of a Suburban, and then you have like a bigger than just a normal compact SUV. It's just a nice car. Mm-hmm. But I think that's really all I can say about.
Were there any other good questions?
There was a lot of questions. I think I ended up getting like 18 in total. A lot of them were kind of deep, and I'm fine with going deep on this podcast, but I don't want to go deep like thinking man with you.
Yeah.
No disrespect. But
No, it's fine. It's fine. You and I do that enough, so.
Yeah, we do that enough, and my brain hurts already. So, oh yes, this one comes from my good friend Mark. He says,
Prothero?
Yes. Can you talk about how Finland doesn't exist?
Finland? I don't know anything about Finland. I've heard it exists, but anything beyond that, I don't know anything.
It's
in Scandinavia, right?
Yeah, it's in Scandinavia.
I don't know anything about it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I seriously, that's one of the countries I know nothing about.
How many countries do you not know anything about?
I didn't take AP Hug.
Oh.
I think I was in environmental science.
Apes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Apes.
So, I guess to go on the whole thing of Finland doesn't exist. Personally, I think Finland exists, but I will say...
Is this an internet joke?
I think it's an internet joke, and I'm going to respond with an internet joke of myself. If there's anything that doesn't exist, it's giraffes, okay? I don't understand how unicorns, simply just a horse with an ivory tusk or whatever at the top of their head, how that is considered unreasonable. Unicorns. But literally a glorified horse that has a neck that's like 15 to 20 feet tall is considered completely real.
I've never thought of a giraffe as a horse with a long neck.
It's not. It's not, but it's like it's a quadrupedal or something. I mean,
I don't know.
I don't understand how unicorns is unreasonable, yet a giraffe is perfectly reasonable. Those are some questions. And then the last question that I think is good. What are your opinions on college athletes being paid for their respective sports? And that comes from Ian.
Musical Ian?
The one that will be on the podcast.
Oh, the one that came in earlier?
Yeah, that came in earlier.
You and I talked about this.
A little bit.
And I'll leave out a couple of the things I said.
That'd probably be best.
I got really into it. No, they should definitely be paid. As people talk about more and more, it seems like an inevitability at this point. I saw that the Supreme Court's hearing some stuff about that, and I guess you could listen to the C-SPAN where they were asking questions to the NCAA lawyers, and they were asking really good questions. So it's an inevitability at this point that they're going to be paid, and I think it's only right. But the thing that sounds difficult to do is, are we gonna pay people based upon how good of a brand they are? So I mean, Zion's probably the best one I can think of right now. Zion Williamson, when he was at Duke, if the NCAA, are they going to pay it just kind of a one number across the board to each student athlete or whatever? Or are they going to pay them based upon the impact? I mean, you can make an argument that Zion Williamson at Duke sold way more tickets than the sixth man at a Division II school. So is the NCAA going to pay student athletes for being student athletes, or are they going to pay based on stardom? So it's a complicated thing, but I'm happy to see that we're moving in the direction of at least discussing how we're going to do it. We've moved on to should we do it? Yeah. The NCAA has kind of been a joke for a long time. I'm just, whenever somebody brings up the NCAA, are they talking about the NCAA in a positive light? No, they're not. It's always how the NCAA screwed up something. So this might be a good way for them to, repair that reputation.
I think, I don't really know what to think on the matter. On one hand, of course they deserve to be paid. Like, that's not even a question.
They make so much money for these schools.
Exactly. And they make so much money for these schools, like you just mentioned, and that they sell so many tickets. And the way that, especially these stars like Suggs off of Gonzaga, for this year. And then, like you mentioned, Zion from Duke, I think that was 2016, 2017, around that range. I don't really remember.
Yeah, it was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, or Anthony Davis back when he was in Duke, I think 2011 or
Kentucky.
2012. Oh, sorry, silly
Kentucky.
me, blue blood, sorry. Kentucky, yeah. And then he got the Pelicans, and then he went to the Lakers. That's right.
Yeah.
So when you have these people that are just astounding at the sport, and they probably can directly contribute to 6 figures, millions worth of revenue for these schools, I see no reason why they shouldn't be paid, because the way that you think about it is that they're risking 1 year of their future NBA career that they make millions upon millions every year just to fulfill a requirement to finish your 1 year of basketball. And to go into other sports like football, I think, is it 1 or 2 years you have to be in the NCAA? You can't be recruited directly out of high school to go into the NFL. That's a different
did.
thing.
I don't know how that works.
No, like in the NFL.
Oh, in the NFL? The NFL, you have to do 2 years, I think. I don't think freshmen. I think you got to do 2 years in college.
Yeah, and that goes back to my point. Is like for the 1% of college athletes that get drafted to their respective professional leagues.
Most of them don't go pro.
Yeah, exactly. Most of them don't go pro. But for those people that do end up going pro, you're risking a year, 2 years, or even 4 or 5 years, depending on how I will be 4 years for eligibility in college. You're risking that and not getting paid in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And the way you think about it is that you're not going to school to go to school, of course, at least if you're in that top 1%. You're not, you're playing sports. You're not really going there for school. You have a lot of people like Shaq that he went there for 2 years. He went to LSU for 2 years. But after he got into the NBA, he finally got his doctorate. I think it was still at LSU. I think he completed his doctorate. Which I give a lot of respect to Shaq.
Shaq is awesome.
He is a great guy from all I can see. All I can see. And that's one of the cool things. But it's like, yeah, they deserve to be paid. But also
the NCAA just has to address the fact that not everybody does a college sport so that they can represent a college. A college, its function is to provide an education for a group of people. But they have these sports, and these players, they're building their brand. They're building their brand for the NBA and all the different sports leagues, and they just seriously going to have to realize that is a fact, and they're going to have to make decisions accordingly.
Something I completely agree with is companies willing to make shoe brands or commercials with these college athletes. I don't see a reason why they shouldn't. They're 18, because they're an adult. They already have, like you said, their personal brand. And if colleges don't want to directly pay their players, if Nike wants to sign Zion right when he gets out of high school, but he's going to Duke instead of directly to the NBA for a shoe deal, they should be able to do that. He's over 18. He's an adult in the U.S.
Well, that was the thing I remember about Zion. I think he had a shoe deal with Nike, if that rings a bell. And that and him getting drafted and leaving college happened in rapid succession. Those two things went with each other. It was as if being in college prevented him from having a shoe deal.
Exactly.
Even though he was the single biggest basketball player in the entire college basketball sport.
Yes.
So, yeah.
They ended up losing in the Final Four that year, right? Or did they end up winning the national championship?
They lost in the Elite Eight, I believe, to Michigan State.
Yeah. Because I remember, I think it was the UCF game in the round of 64, or was it round of 32, when Taco Fall and Williamson, they went at it, and there's a lot of arguments to be said. The Taco Fall, he plays for the Boston Celtics now. I think he's like 7'5" or something ridiculous.
It is. It's nuts.
Yeah, and he really smart fellow as well. He actually took, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he took like all AP classes or advanced classes like in high school. And
yeah,
he was,
cool.
and he's I think he's from Senegal. I know he's from Africa, but Senegal is one that's ringing in my head, but I'm not sure if that's correct. And he came to the States without his parents, worked his butt off in school, became a pro basketball player with the Celtics. I think he's in one of the development leagues. I'm not sure if he starts. I don't think he starts for the Celtics, or
he's on the bench.
Is he on bench?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen they put him in the game a few times.
Yeah, I remember that because there's a video that went viral when Brad Stevens, the head coach of the Celtics, he was
The crowd.
He was like motioning to the crowd to make more noise for the Taco in.
Yeah,
then,
no.
Then
I love
everybody
that.
went crazy when it went, and I was like, that's like I'm not sure if wholesome's the word, but that's pretty awesome.
Wholesome might be a good word for that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enough on the whole questions. We're now 26 minutes in, and Noah, you have seen a lot of movies recently.
I have movie. I'm a big movie guy. Take this how you will, but as being a big movie guy, I prefer seeing movies alone in movie theaters. I know that has about 1,000 different connotations, but I like seeing them alone because I don't want to have to go see a movie I don't want to go see because I'm with somebody else. I do it. I don't know. Think of me as a movie critic. I'm not, but I watch movies that way. I'm really focused whenever I watch them. So yeah, in the last week and a half, I think I've seen all 3 of the Lord of the Rings movies playing here.
Dork.
Played them in Fayetteville. Yeah. So I saw Fellowship of the Ring one night, and then every Friday they'd have the new one. So I saw Fellowship Tuesday of spring break, and then I saw Two Towers Friday of spring break, and then last night I saw Return of the King, and then I actually saw another movie last week. I saw they were playing the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston, the 4-hour-long 10 Commandments.
How was that? I've never seen that before.
It was good. The thing is, you can't watch movies from the 50s and the 60s and try and compare them to modern day, especially when they're that long. I mean, one of the longest movie that I think most of our generation is familiar with, because it's the second highest grossing movie of all time since Avatar took its spot just a few weeks ago, Endgame. Endgame did hold your attention for all 3 hours, but it was trying to tell an insane amount of stuff. And that was what justified the 3-hour runtime. So that had a really, really good pace. But the 10 Commandments takes its time, as did a lot of movies back then. This one was interesting because one thing about movies, it was made in the 60s. But in the late 50s, mid 50s, late 50s, and then the early 60s, it was the time of epics. These great stories. Lawrence of Arabia is one of them, and they had actually the best example is Cleopatra. Cleopatra is a 4-hour movie. There is a cut of it that is 5.5, and 20th Century Fox bankrupted themselves financing that movie, and the sets are magnificently huge. The amount of people, whenever you see the people slaving away on temples in Egypt, those are people. They paid that many extras to be in that movie. The whole point of the epic was to be as grand as possible, and the money that they spent on that reflected it. And the 10 Commandments is like that. It came in at the kind of after the age of epics was going on, but at the beginning of it took 4 years to make. And the director, Cecil B. DeMille, he actually did a silent version of the 10 Commandments in the 20s. So this was his opportunity to go back in the 50s they started coloring movies.
Was it like Technicolor?
Yes, this one had Technicolor, and then Panavision.
Yeah,
Panavision cameras. They get the ultra wide shots and stuff. So it's a phenomenal movie, but it can be a slog at times because it takes its time. But you also have to remember that the story of Moses it's not a short one. There's a reason it's 4 hours long. It has an intermission. It has an introduction by the director, just explaining things about the movie. And another thing I really, really loved about it, and one of the reasons I'd like to see epics come back and take this into account about the Ten Commandments. In that introduction from the director, the story of Moses is not just something Christians talk about. Muslims, Christians, and Jews, they all view the first 5 books of the Old Testament as canon, if you will.
Yeah, and it's because they're an Abrahamic religion.
They're an Abrahamic religion, yes. And so one of the things that was so cool about that, when you're watching the credits of the Ten Commandments, it goes through all of the different places they did research. And they did research with Jewish rabbis about how do we get this story right. And it was all about doing it right. And so no, it's a phenomenal movie, but you know, it's also this phenomenal story with a lot of players and a lot of faults. But no, it's a great movie. I think you should see it. Every year, the Holy Week, so the week before Easter, I believe ABC runs it. It's 4 hours long with commercials, but I think it's worth everybody watching it. So, but no, going back to theaters, I'll probably slow it down a little bit, but it's nice. That is one of my happy places, being in a movie theater, just experiencing movies. So I'm really, really happy to be back, and it seems like blockbusters are coming back out this summer. Black Widow, that'll be in theaters. I plan on going to see it instead of paying for the $20 premium access on Disney Plus, which is an embarrassment, Disney. That is an embarrassment. But I'll just go on $5.50 movie ticket night on Tuesdays or whatever. So I'll go see that this summer. Godzilla vs. Kong came out when I was, after the Ten Commandments, it got out at like 10 o'clock, but they still had showings of stuff going on. That was the night that Godzilla vs. Kong opened. And it was really, really nice to see as many people at the movie theater as there were. People were going back, and I'm happy that's happening.
Yeah, I was really surprised when, was it Wednesday or was it Tuesday of last week when Godzilla and Kong came out?
It was Wednesday night. I think it was released on Thursday officially, but you know, they have the night before.
Yeah. So I guess I never even realized this until this weekend, but I remember multiple people being like, yeah, you know, I'm going to go see the first showing of Godzilla versus Kong, or Godzilla Kong.
Apparently it's good.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Sounds like a movie that would just steal your money and it'd be really crappy, but what I've heard is that it doesn't waste its time with human characters and stupid exposition when you go to see a movie called Godzilla versus Kong. It is shorter than 2 hours. I've heard like half of the movie itself is a battle scene or whatever. I think there's like 2 separate battle scenes as I understand it. And I'm happy to see they didn't waste their time on human characters and plot, because when you're going to see a movie like that, you better get what's in the title. And people are liking it, and apparently it's because you get what you paid for.
Yeah, and what I was thinking, and I guess I didn't realize this till the last weekend, multiple people were like, yeah, I'm going to go see the movie. And it didn't really click with me, but I was like, I remember immediately thinking, why would you go see a movie? You could just stream it on like Disney Plus or Netflix. And I've just been so unattached to the movie theaters as of late because of the pandemic that I don't think like I used to. Like, I would go with you a lot of times. Like, if I'm not sure how many movies you would see, but I would assume maybe 2 movies a month. I would at least watch 1 movie a month and go to the theater.
What have you and I seen?
We've seen a lot of things. Normally when we end up seeing things together, we actually go with Dad, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, we'll always go on the Tuesday night, the 5:50, and we'll just get a large popcorn or whatever. And,
yeah, no, it's always fun.
So.
But, yeah.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the epics from the 50s, the 60s, and the early 70s? Because I personally I've only seen Lawrence of Arabia out of all the epics. I haven't seen the 10 Commandments. I haven't seen Cleopatra. But I
haven't seen like Cleopatra either. It's one I'd like to see, though.
Yeah. But with like Lawrence of Arabia, I remember thinking, wow, this movie takes forever. But then after watching the entire movie, I'm like, wow, although, you know, of course it was made in the 60s, it's not what we would expect now as an actual, you know, very long movie. But it was an excellent movie.
It is.
It was long.
It tells a complicated story. And you got to remember, making movies is about making money. That's why it's an investment from a studio to pay for somebody's movie, and you got to know that people are going to want to go see it. I don't know if people want to see epics. These 3-hour, 4-hour movies with intermissions. The reason they don't really do that anymore is because you can't have as many slots at a theater in a given day if it is 1 4 hours long, or 2 if it has a 15-minute intermission.
And it's the same price anyway.
Yes, but I think where we've gotten with special effects, I think it would be cool to revisit epics. I love human stories, and unfortunately, in the times we live in, really complex stories where we want a hero, but sometimes we're not willing to accept it. Somebody who is heroic, also doing something wrong at one point or another. We kind of have these unforgivable sins, and sometimes you have to leave that at the door to accept humans and as they are. They're imperfect, and some of the most amazing people who've done the most amazing thing are imperfect. And if you're going to tell an epic, you have to get ready to address that, and you have to be okay with addressing that, even if someone is flawed. So as soon as we're ready to judge people objectively and let people come back from doing wrong as a society, then we'll be ready for epics, and I really await that.
Yeah.
They go deeper than superhero movies. I love superhero movies, but superhero movies, it has a very clearly defined good and evil, kind of in a Star Wars blue versus red lightsaber. The lines have become a little bit more blurred, but that is one of the appeals of comic book movies, and we need flawed characters.
Yeah, and I'll go back to that in a second, but the only epic that's even relatively close to what could be considered an epic that I can think of in the past 10 years is, although I haven't seen the entire thing, is the movie Interstellar. And that's just because that it's telling the story of one man and just through this whole
It's an amazing
journey.
I like Interstellar. I see you've pulled up Christopher Nolan.
Yes, I have.
Christopher Nolan, I think he's the one closest to making epics right now.
Yeah.
He did Dunkirk a few years ago, which Dunkirk almost has this Hitchcock thing about it.
Oh yeah.
I went into, whenever you see it, I actually saw Saving Private Ryan yesterday. I've been watching some of the Steven Spielberg movies, so I saw that, and I saw Schindler's List, which is amazing. But that's one that I don't know if Schindler's List, if they made that movie again today, I don't know how people would take it. It's such a difficult story. It's such a beautiful story, but it's such a difficult thing to do. Some of the characters are terrible. I don't know if we're ready for that as a society right now.
It's definitely a top 5 movie for me. I can only watch it, once a year or even less. But when I watch it, it's like an emotional journey to see through all of this.
Yeah, but no, it's a beautiful film. But Saving Private Ryan, it's a war epic. But yeah, I watched that the other night. I think right now Christopher Nolan is the one that's really making some of the best movies. I'm excited to see Tenet that comes out on HBO Max on the 1st of May. So on May 1st, I'm probably clearing my schedule and watching Tenet. But yeah, I hope those come back. Christopher Nolan I'm excited to see the movies that he makes because they're ambitious, and unfortunately, in the case you were talking about Interstellar, that's one that some people are kind of torn on. I appreciate the ambition, and because of the ambition, it tries talking about so much that is so confusing. It's worth a few rewatches, and there's an art to rewatching a movie. A movie being good, part of that has to do with how many layers there are, and you're going to have to watch it 3 or 4 times to uncover all the layers. And Inception's probably the best example of that. I watched that movie for a 3rd time, and this time I understood it, and that was why it was so good. Ambition's not a bad thing. It has to be well executed, but sometimes you can't perfectly execute ambition, and you have to just take it for what it is, but you have to appreciate what it does get right.
Yeah. You, on your big high school essay that you're going to end up writing, you're going to write about a Christopher Nolan film, or rather a series. That's the whole Batman series from 2005 to 2011. Was that when The Dark Knight Rises, or?
They came out in 2012.
12, okay. Says because Batman Begins came out in 05, 08 was Dark Knight, and then 12 was... I remember watching that at the drive-in the first time.
The Dark Knight Rises, yeah.
Yeah, I think I watched the first hour of it, and then I just fell asleep.
So everybody, me being a movie nerd, there's certain movies that are personally special. They have like a personal thing to them, and The Dark Knight's one of them, because when I was 4, that came out, and if you've seen The Dark Knight, you know that a 4-year-old probably shouldn't be watching it because they can't understand it. There is so much stuff going on in that movie that it is PG-13. But the psychological ideas of what they're addressing they're very mature. So my parents wouldn't let me watch that until I was 10. So I was awaiting my 10th birthday, not to go into the double digits, but to be able to watch The Dark Knight finally. And since then, I've watched that movie a bunch of times. And there is so much going on in that movie. So yeah, as a movie nerd, I need to do my IB paper, my extended essay, and I think that's just the one that I'm the most passionate about, and I actually have like kind of personal and emotional connection to. So yeah, that's the one I'm going to talk about. I'm going to write that over the summer, and I'm excited. So when I rewatched it, and I took like a page and a half of notes. And actually, the act of taking notes during a movie, which sounds counterproductive, especially if you're just trying to blow off steam by watching a movie. I don't really watch movies that way all the time, especially if I'm rewatching them. But taking notes, I did pick up a whole lot of things I hadn't, because I was really trying to focus on every different aspect of the movie.
Yeah. Over spring break, I ended up watching that trilogy. I watched the whole thing, and Batman Begins is way deeper than I used to think. Oh,
yes,
and that's
I thought it was the worst one, but actually, if you watch Batman Begins and Dark Knight together, they are very connected, and they're both really great.
Yeah, and to go back to that is I remember watching The Dark Knight first, because that's the mainstay of that whole trilogy. That's considered one of the greatest, or one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, just because of, like you said, the layers of actual meaning that are found, the conflict between good and evil, but also the political situations in Gotham, and just all of that. I remember watching that the first time around, and I'm like, it's a 9 o'clock. It's 9 p.m. on Thursday. I'm not going to go to bed until 1 o'clock anyway, and it's spring break, so I might as well watch Batman Begins. And I watched the entirety of Batman Begins, and I'm like, wow, this movie is a lot better than I remember thinking.
Yes.
And then the next morning, I woke up and watched The Dark Knight Rises. And The Dark Knight Rises, I remember not getting it whatsoever, but then I watched it again, and it made more sense.
I had a conversation. It was a quick conversation with my extended essay supervisor, the teacher that I'm going to be writing this paper kind of, and they're going to be looking over it, giving suggestions, trying to guide my thinking a little bit whenever it veers off course. And he is a comic book nerd. That was why I picked him. And what he pointed out something about that trilogy that I think is really interesting. What he said was that two things: The Dark Knight Rises is accepted by most to be the worst one, because there's a lot. It's an ambitious movie, and it tries to tell this story of Bane taking over Gotham City, and he does it by shutting off all the he blows up all the bridges, and it's this isolated thing with a ticking time bomb, and it's all about anarchy, and that's a hard thing to do when you're talking about a society. It's a lot to tackle, and some people think it falters in trying to do that, but it is the most comic book of the three. Batman Begins is more or less just about crime. There are some big set pieces toward the end, especially with the train sequence. But The Dark Knight has a lot of stuff going on. But the first two, Batman Begins, Dark Knight, they are about the crime world more than they are about Batman. Batman is the least interesting character. That was something that this teacher pointed out, and that's why they're so good. We already know what to expect from Batman. His parents were murdered, and he's fighting crime because the city police department hasn't been living up to that responsibility. But we knew that going into it. And the reason that those three movies are so good is because it develops everything around Batman, and it makes him the least interesting part about it, which gives you an opportunity to really dive deep into Gotham City and see the interesting stuff going on.
Very good analysis, Noah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have like a 4,000 word paper about something relating to that.
I really do wish you luck on that. At this point, for my paper that I end up writing, I have a general idea what I want to do. I know I want it to be between the time frame of 1905 to 1912, but there's a lot that happened between within that 15 years.
In the United States?
Originally I wanted it to be about something a little bit more complex in Europe, specifically relating to maybe the rise of communism, or the First World War, but I realized that a lot of those subjects are a little too complex, and it's not that I could not write about it, it's just I already have so much work I need to do anyway. I'd rather not make it the most difficult thing in the world, because with like yours, it's an analysis. It's kind of an opinion piece to a certain extent. You are able to expand and you're able to use a lot of your own thoughts for it. But with mine is that, the route I'm taking, I end up just having to read a lot, do a lot of research, and make sure that I can verbalize what my thoughts on the matter were, which I know I can eventually do that. It's just going to be a lot more work than originally I was expecting. But, I think the only other thing we were going to talk about was econ and the new age. Kind of like this.
We're at 45 minutes.
We could probably talk for another 10 minutes and be just fine.
I'm cool with that.
I'm cool with that too.
This is a fun one.
Yeah, I really like this podcast so far. I like it better than the one that we did the first time around.
Yeah, you and I were kind of going off the walls.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Yeah, hopefully this is a bit more focused. But yeah, econ and the new age.
Dogecoin.
Dogecoin is funny.
NFTs.
I think the NFT hype is going to die pretty soon because everybody hopped on it at the same time.
Yeah.
I think I OD'd on NFT hype, I'm in rehab right now, so I don't really care as much.
So for those who do not know what NFTs are,
you got to know what NFTs are at this point.
NFTs are, people that actually have a life, they probably don't know what NFTs are.
That's true.
Or
Actually,
they're not an econ.
Brownie points if you don't know what an NFT is.
You get your gold star for the day. So an NFT is something called a non-fungible token. And the idea is that fungible or fungibility or whatever that term would be, is something that you can exchange. So it's kind of the idea.
It has a collector's item.
No, not necessarily. Oh yeah, it's like Pokemon cards. That's kind of like the whole idea behind these NFTs. But the idea of fungibility is that if I have $1 and I gave it to Noah and I said, hand me 10 dimes, we both will think it's an equally good deal because that dollar can be broken down into 10 dimes. And my 10 dimes can go up into $1. It's the idea of fungibility, breaking down and gathering back up the inherent value. But if you were to rip a Pokemon card in half that's worth $500, and that is not worth $500 anymore, that might be worth maybe $1 now.
Because it's a Pokemon card ripped in half.
Exactly.
So it's half a card.
So a non-fungible token is effectively a digitalized
certificate of authenticity.
Certificate of authenticity.
I think about it that way.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, the way that I think about it is like baseball cards or Pokemon cards. Imagine you have, somebody makes digital art and then they sell it as an NFT. Well, you now own the rights to that digital art, but it would be the same that in the real world, that if you own the rights to a 1984 Pete Rose card or a baseball card or whatever.
I think NFTs are cool. We'll see where they go. It's early on. We'll see where they go. You got to give things like that time.
And I will want to add this. Sorry that I interrupted you.
No, go ahead.
But I want to add this. Noah and I right now, we are not investment people. This is just for educational purposes only. With NFTs and probably with the other things we're going to talk about today, they are extremely valuable. Not valuable, volatile. That's the word I'm going for. That's the reason why we call it the new age, is because like all new things, kind of like the .com bubble, you have a failing company, just stick a .com on the end of it and you'll get some more funding in your IPO. So, these are very volatile. We suggest nothing. We are talking just about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things when you were scoping out the idea of economics in the new age, I think the effect that stimulus checks.
Oh,
I'm not going to offer an opinion on whether or not stimulus checks are a good long-term idea, but the reality of it is a lot of, I think you got to be over 18. So there are, especially, I'm more familiar with this situation, young men over the age of 18 getting their stimulus checks and they're investing with it. It's not like it's not as simple as they're going to a casino, but there's research involved when you're investing, and I like that people are getting involved with the investing, and obviously the most recognizable example of this effect is the GameStop thing.
Yeah,
which everybody else has talked to death, but I think it's an interesting phenomenon. I like to see that our generation, Gen Z, is doing something productive for once and getting involved with money and investing, because that is kind of a part. They're getting a head start on a certain aspect of adulting, which is a good thing.
I personally like investing. I like the idea of the stock market, the commodities market. The cryptocurrency exchange. How much a dollar is worth. I've really been fascinated by a lot of those different topics. And it's really interesting to see, like you mentioned, that a lot of people of our generation, a lot of the younger millennials, that when they did get those stimulus checks or that, X, Y, or Z, they're starting to become a lot more involved with the stock market. For example, there is a subreddit on Reddit called r/Wall Street Bets. Wall Street Bets was known for very risky investing strategies.
Known for all the wrong things.
Yes. A lot of yes. So they were known for very risky trading and speculative investment strategies called options trading. So that if you think a company is going to do really well, you do a call. If you think it's going to do bad, you put a put into it. And what ended up happening is that after the GameStop fiasco, a lot of the people that originally pumped up the stock for GameStop from where it was at like $5 to $15 to $20 a share, all the way up to, I think it reached a peak of about 400 or so.
I thought it was 350, but it might have. Oh,
yeah,
pre-market.
Pre-market, it might have been that high, but I think actual on the exchange, it was about 350. It pumped it up from that low to that high.
It's ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. A lot of those people originally started on Wall Street Bets, and there was one that his username I cannot say, but his name was Keith Gill.
Let's call him Deep Value.
Let's call him Deep Value. Yes, Deep Value. He originally made maybe a smaller 5-figure investment into GameStop using options tradings. He was like, this is a lot better than X, Y, and Z, or maybe it was just stocks. I don't remember specifically. And I think it was just stocks. And he ended up making a lot of money out of the deal because he bought it he bought the dip when it was at $6 a share.
Buy the dip.
Yeah, that's the whole time in the market beats timing the market. This new generation of very risky investors, they're like, that might be wrong. We think timing the market is better than
the hope is that these stimulus checks have been enough seed money for maybe people to learn from their mistakes.
Yes.
If you think about mistakes, if you can pay for the right mistakes, it's actually a good investment sometimes, because you can learn. It's like taking a college class. Mistakes can be like college classes, and if you pay for college classes, you can pay for mistakes. You can learn from them. Yeah. So I like that people are learning. They're having successes. They're screwing up, and they're learning from it. It's good.
Yeah, I'm really I'm kind of surprised to see where the value of the dollar is going to go. Because
who knows? I'm not an economist. We'll see. Some people are saying it's going to be an inflation. We're giving everyone stimmy checks. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. That's one of those weird things that we'll just have to see. Yeah, economics in the new age is kind of weird. The whole people trying to
diversify, baby. Don't put all your chips in one basket. That's a bad way to go. All these people, putting all their money into Bitcoin. Diversify, buddy. Whenever Bitcoin falls, if it does, again, I don't know, I can't speculate, but you're going to wish you hadn't done that.
Yeah. Normally when I'm investing or even think of investing, because at this point I don't have that. Technically, I am under 18, so technically I have none. But in the stock market and any exchanges. But I would imagine that if I were to have those, I'd be very conservative on what I invest because, when you're at a very young age, that Noah and I have the privilege of being at, it's the idea of, do you want to consistently make 5% in the stock market every single year for the rest of your life until you get this 470 and we can withdraw Social Security, or 68 or 72 or wherever it's going to be at for our age? Or do you want to, possibly make 100 or 200% profit in a period of a few weeks, or also have it worth nothing? At that point, it's not that it's gambling, but it's kind of gambling. But also, you do need speculation in the market in order to keep it as a check and balance with a lot of the other external forces that you have.
I'm happy to see our generation's getting involved with that, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's really all we had talking about today.
Any quick thing before we go?
I don't really think I have anything too much to say. Noah, I know sometimes you annoy me, and I annoy you a lot of times. But that being said, thank you for being on the podcast today. I couldn't really think of anybody to celebrate our 5 podcast anniversary or something. Yeah.
We have people telling us hello on the other side of the room.
Yes, and that is our cue to go. So Like mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, if you want to hear more of this podcast, please subscribe to the Near Patients podcast on YouTube and follow us on Spotify. Currently, we can only post so much on Spotify. How many episodes every month or so, just because of my streaming, my little streaming server service that I have. But we'll figure it out and eventually get all of these podcasts on Spotify. So that being said, everybody listening and you, Noah, have a great rest of your day or night. And I don't know, stonks to the moon or something. I don't know.
Stonks to the moon, baby.
Stonks
Thanks
to
for
the
having
moon. All right, see ya.